Welcome everyone to the Down Under Diaries. Down Under Diary entry number 1. Travel to Canberra. Dear Diary, you might ask yourself, how was I feeling right before this very big trip? And so, to start off, I was feeling really excited because I couldn't believe that I was actually doing it and that my plans were becoming true. But I was also worried because I was thinking about how everything would turn out, what would happen if something went wrong, what would happen if I missed one of my connections during my travels to Canberra, or if my luggage didn't make it. What if I wouldn't like it here in Canberra? I was also stressed because of all the reasons and all the questions I just mentioned before, and because I had so much to do right before leaving, and also because I knew that there were going to be so many things that I would have to get done once I came to Canberra, such as setting up a bank account, setting up a phone number, and all of that, and it was really stressing me out. I was also feeling sad because I knew that I was about to leave Switzerland for 6 months and not see my family, and it would also mean the end of my time in Geneva, hopefully, if I pass all my exams. So yeah, it's kind of like it also signaled the end of an era. At the same time, I was also quite happy of leaving because, well, I knew it was going to be the start of a new adventure at the very least, and that I would leave Swiss winter and the cold behind. You may know I am not really a big fan of either of those two things. Although I've now been warned by quite a few Aussies that I did choose to come to the second coldest Australian city and that I would be experiencing winter. But they did also say that winter around here is 8 degrees, which I think should be fine. I hope that I'll be able to manage that. But yeah, let's get back to, as we say in French, retournons à nos moutons. So let's get back to our sheep, which is the trip. So all in all, it was almost 34 hours, I think. But yeah, I have to say I'm really grateful that my family brought me to the airport and that we also got to have one last dinner together, and that way I could see everyone again before I left. We said goodbye at the first boarding pass checkpoint before security, which is kind of similar to when I left for Sweden back in 2017, except that there were a few more people there this time and that there were 3 cameras on me when I turned to go. But yeah, it was fun and I was glad to have that moment with them. And then I went through security, stocked up on water and snacks for the rest of the trip because honestly I wasn't sure how many meals I'd be getting throughout my 3 flights that I had to get to Canberra because of, well, all of the time zone changes and everything, and I just wanted to be sure to have something to eat until the end. So that brings us to my first flight of the trip, which was Zurich, Hong Kong. The flight went fine. I was sat next to a very nice lady called Samantha. I got a decent amount of sleep in before we landed in Hong Kong. And thankfully, we landed almost 40 minutes early because we had a lot of headwind during our trip. And it was really, really useful for me because as the flights were scheduled, I was going to have about an hour and 25 minutes to change flights in Hong Kong. And well, when I got my boarding passes in Zurich, I realized that technically the boarding for my second flight would start roughly 45 minutes after my first plane landed, which, yeah, it's not a lot if you just landed and then you need to taxi and wait for everyone else to get off the plane to be able to get off the plane and then still transfer flights and all of that. So those 40 minutes were really, really handy. But thankfully, Samantha assured me during the flight that Hong Kong airport was really, really small and I had absolutely nothing to worry about. Well, it does turn out that Hong Kong airport was a little bit bigger than I imagined when she assured me that the airport was small, especially considering the fact that I had to go get a tram to go to my other gate because it would be faster than walking all the way. I think there was supposed to be a way to walk all the way, but yeah, anyways. Once I did get to the gate, I realized that Samantha was right. I did not have to worry that much about changing because I had plenty of time. When we landed and I got off the plane, I asked, I think, about 5 airport employees how to get to your gate because I just did not understand or see the path that they were trying to explain to me. Obviously, I also made it through the second security control of my trip, which is a little bit heartbreaking because I'd bought 1 liter of water in Zurich and then I got another half liter on the plane, and I only managed to drink about half of it before arriving at the security. And since we had to throw away all liquids that were more than 100 milliliters, I did have to throw away the rest of the water, which broke my heart. I brought it. That alas, once I was situated at my new gate, I was able to get my course and seminar allocations done, which I'm really glad that I could, because technically it opened 3 or 4 hours into my flight, and it was really stressing me out that I wouldn't be able to get into the seminars that I wanted. And turns out I couldn't get in quite all of them, but thanks to the swapping tool of the course allocation site and some other changes, I think I've been able to perfect my schedule so that everything will go nicely and smoothly. That brings me to my second flight from Hong Kong to Melbourne. And one last thing about Hong Kong airport. As I was boarding, I realized that most announcements there were only being made in Chinese and that I had absolutely no idea what was going on, what was being said, which group was boarding. But at some point I just decided to follow the bulk of the passengers, and it turns out they were all lining up single file to board. I was sat right next to the emergency exit, which at first I thought, yay, it's a win, I get some extra leg room, it's going to be fun and good. Yeah, in the end, I didn't get too much sleep on that second flight, simply because the emergency exit is also situated next to the toilets, which meant that we had a lot of foot traffic of people coming and going to the toilets. And even when they kind of like dimmed down all the lights for the passengers to sleep, obviously the light in the toilet was still on, and since a lot of people went to the toilets, the doors were constantly being opened and closed. I used to have a light alarm clock back in Geneva, so I kind of conditioned myself to wake up with the light, and so the constant opening and closing of the doors kept me awake all night, which is a bit unfortunate because I specifically brought earplugs so that I wouldn't be disturbed during the night, and then turns out, well, the light was the problem, not the sounds. By the way, don't worry, I did manage to keep myself busy with reading and listening to music, so thank God for music and e-readers. My body started to get really confused when the crew started serving breakfast at like 5 a.m. Melbourne or Aussie time, obviously, since Swiss time is about 10 hours behind Aussie time, which meant that technically we did get breakfast at 5 a.m. Aussie time, which is early, but also that would be translate to roughly about 7 p.m. Swiss time. And yeah, so to have breakfast at 7 p.m. was kind of weird. But even if I considered myself nicely caught up to Hong Kong time, which is 7 hours ahead of Swiss time, it would still have been 2 a.m. and breakfast at 2 a.m. is not a fun experience. But we made it through, and then we were in Melbourne, and there I had to get through the immigration, and thank God that Melbourne does have e-passports, because the lines to go through physical immigration with an immigration agent were very, very long, because there are quite a few countries with e-passports, but as soon as you had, I think, travelers under the age of like 10 or 14, depending on the country, you had to go through the physical line, and as I said, it was very, very long, and I was happy to have had to stand just for a couple of minutes to wait for my kiosk rather than wait for probably a good 30-40 minutes, if not longer. Then I went to wait for my bags. I got them, thankfully, left the international terminal and went to look for my domestic terminal to give up my bags again and check them in. And I made it. I went through, I think, security check number 3. Then I had some time to kill there before my last flight. Once again, the flight went well, and unsurprisingly, the plane was a lot smaller than it had been for the last 2 flights, which were big intercontinental flights. So yeah, I was sat next to Mark, and he was like the usual suspects of people on flights from somewhere to Canberra. I think the usual clientele of those flights is businessmen and women and not overly tired exchange students, although that might be a bit different right now. A lot of us are coming in to Canberra these last couple of days. We had a lovely chat. I don't know if it was just my company or the fact that that last flight was a lot shorter than the others, but after no time at all, time had flown by and we landed in Canberra. I said goodbye to Mark and went off to find the baggage claim and to get my luggage, to meet the people from ANU that organized the shuttle to our residence for incoming ANU students, which was really nice. But I'll be sharing more about that and settling into Canberra in the next couple of entries. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned for that. Quick note from editing Nadia, I can officially say that I've passed all of my courses and exams from last semester. Unless I utterly fail all of my classes over here, I am officially done with all courses back in Geneva. So yay, and see you soon.